This week, we're rebroadcasting some executive interviews from Identiverse, so we're doing the news first. We've got 7 rounds of funding totaling almost $300 million. Formstack acquires OpenRaven. Fortinet acquires Lacework. Big one there. Tenable acquires Eureka Security. Apple introduces private cloud compute. What the heck is it? We'll talk about it. Will Microsoft Recall get recalled? The Snowflake breach isn't a breach, or is it? Bad AI benchmarks, debunking the stupid user myth. And then after the news, we've got 6 pre recorded executive interviews from Identiverse, as I mentioned. We interview Vibhuti Sinha, Chief Product Officer at Savient, about increasing KYB coverage. That's Know Your Business. And Tarvinder Sembi, VP of Identity Solutions at IDI, about the future of identity management. And Chris Simmons, VP of Strategy at Savvy, about whether your SSO is on point. The next trio of interviews includes an interview with Ajay Gupta, CEO at SDG, about unlocking business value in identity programs, an interview with Jerry Gebel, VP of Product and Standards at Strata Identity, about business continuity with identity services, and finally, an interview with Mark Batchelor, CTO and co founder at Vericent, about combating account and platform fraud. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Graylog elevates enterprise-level cybersecurity through its comprehensive SIM, centralized log management, and API security solutions. Built on the Graylog platform, Graylog Security combines SIM, security analytics, threat detection, and incident response capabilities. Unlike traditional SIMs, which offer complex and costly setups, Graylog Security simplifies security and operational challenges with an optimal blend of licensing, people, and infrastructure costs. To see a demo, visit securityweekly.com/Graylog. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Kitchen Klutzes of America Day. This is episode 365, recorded on Thursday, May 44th, 2024. I'm not good with dates. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, Tyler Shields. How are you doing?
Good. I'm trying to figure out what a kitchen klutz is. Is it literally like what I think it is? Someone who drops
Like
stuff
cutting
in
yourself
the kitchen?
while chopping stuff. Yeah.
Ah,
Dropping
okay.
things, pots and pans, burning stuff in the oven.
I guess I'm not really a kitchen klutz. Are you a kitchen klutz, Adrian?
Rarely, but when I am, I take I burn bacon until it's unrecognizable, apparently.
Gotcha. Didn't even know that was possible.
It is. It certainly is. There might be photos. Also joining me is the Admiral of AI, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How are you doing, Katie?
I am fine. I am not in the kitchen right now, so that is good.
I'll take your word for it. No comment. And finally, joining us today is the Prince of Product, the Knight of Newsletters, Darwin Salazar. How are you doing, Darwin?
Can't complain. Happy to be here and discuss what we have lined up for today. There's been a lot of money being thrown around these past couple of weeks, and I think we've identified and noticed some trends specifically in the data space, and I'm super excited to jump into things. So happy to be here overall.
Yeah, me too. I'll definitely be throwing some of these to you because I noticed you covered some of these certainly more deeply than I did in your newsletter. So let's get to it. I think I have a quick announcement here. Let's see. Yes, quick announcement. Dive into cybersecurity with Cyber Risk Alliance for exclusive insights from RSA Conference 2024. Explore executive interviews with the industry leaders, uncovering visionary perspectives on threats and strategies. Delve into curated articles on trends and innovations, equipping yourself with essential knowledge for today's cyber landscape. You can visit securityweekly.com/RSAC for expert guidance and inspiration in navigating cybersecurity challenges confidently. And with that, we'll go to the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW365. That's the number of today's episode. That's a lot of numbers. That's a whole year's worth of numbers. After today, you could watch Security Weekly one a day, every day of the year, and not run out. If you want to follow along as we go through the news, you can check out that link. And in a dramatic change today, we have 13 items. We might get through everything today. We might have time to talk about everything. Um, yeah, so let's dig in here.
That's kind of a misnomer. I'm gonna call you
So,
out on camera,
cyber,
though. We have 13 items with
what's that?
sub-bullets.
Yeah, let's be real, Adrian. You have 13 items, but you've rolled together a handful of
Shh.
them.
It was Darwin's idea.
well, well, he's a smart man, that Darwin.
I'll take the blame. I don't know how to count.
Yeah, so yeah, rolled all the funding together into one item. But yeah, so I'm pretending we have 13. We really have like 19, but who's counting? So yeah, starting off, almost $300 million worth of funding, which we usually don't give the totals of the funding that we cover, but that's not too abnormal. It's certainly not the lowest we've seen. It's certainly not the highest. But yeah, $88 million Series C is a big Series C for Cyberhaven, and and Cyberhaven is already calling out DSPM. To quote the press release, they protect the intellectual property that traditional DLP, insider risk, and DSPM tools fail to identify and secure. Data like source code, product designs, and customer records. And they magically classify all your sensitive information, understand it. They use AI models. Um, Darwin, I'm going to go to you on this one. It's going to be kind of a data episode here, but uh, do you know anything about Cyberhaven? What are your thoughts on this one?
I haven't dove into Cyberhaven too much, but the data security market is extremely hot right now, coming off the heels of like the generative AI boom and all these foundational models and proprietary language models that enterprises are building out is only as good as the data that it's trained upon. So there's obviously that portion of data security, that trend that has caused data security to jump off like over these past 6 months. But then also, this raise comes on the heels of Tenable acquiring Eureka Security, and then a bunch of other DSPM acquisitions. IBM has acquired Polar, CrowdStrike has acquired Flow, CrowdStrike. No, so what
Palo Alto
else?
got
There
one.
was
You
Palo
got
Alto
Dig.
acquired Dig, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like 5 or 6 acquisitions in the DSPM space. And now you have Cyberhaven taking a dig at the DSPM space, saying that it's not comprehensive enough. And what I think Cyberhaven's secret sauce is, as they highlighted in their press release, is data lineage, which ultimately covers the origin of where data has originated from in the overall data lifecycle, and a bunch of metadata associated with the movement of that data. So for example, you may have with like a application that handles credit card information. That data flows to like a database, and then you may have uh, like one data science team from one department handling it and pulling and creating a copy and bringing it over to another database. And so there's just like a lot of movement of different data copies and things of that nature, and being able to track where all of these copies are being built and sent out to, and just the overall lineage of this sensitive data and crown jewel data is extremely important. And I think their $88 million raise hints at that these other DSPM solutions are not properly handling or solving the data lineage problem, which is very relevant to um, the most regulated industries. So think about like the financial industries that have to comply with PCI, or healthcare industries that have to comply with HIPAA.
So
And
so
so
how
this
do you
is,
how do
yeah.
you do that though, Darwin? Like are you put some kind of watermark with the data or something like that so you can track it like practically, like that's always been the challenge with data, right? Like once you start wrapping it in controls, it makes it hard to use, makes it hard to share and collaborate on. How do you track the data like that?
I would assume, as you mentioned, it's some sort of watermark, tag, or label. and then being able to visually represent how many hops and skips that data is taking and where copies currently reside. So maybe like some graph that shows the overall data journey, where it resides today, and using tags or some sort of watermark function to be able to track it.
I mean, that's some exciting stuff if you can automatically generate a data flow diagram for me for some of my data. Like that's some hot stuff.
So I don't know enough about Cyberhaven to actively comment on what they do or don't do, but in theory, the ability to track it and map it to infrastructure locations in a physical way over time, that is very interesting to me for sure. It's very unique and novel and innovative. I'm not convinced anybody can do that yet. So until I actually see it work and I see a UI, I'm going to pull the old curmudgeon card
Huge
and
if
say,
true.
huge if true.
Exactly.
Still not convinced said item is true. But the question I want to bring up now that Darwin kind of gave us the land of the market in the data security market is why do we still need to invest 88 million or whatever the hell they took 88 million in a Series C into a company today? Like what are they doing with 88 million dollars that they need to do to grow this company to the next level? It seems like we haven't learned our lessons from 2021. Okay, we didn't raise 100 in our C. We didn't raise 110. We only raised 88. Okay, so maybe we have learned. Or maybe this just is another one of those spewing too much money at a problem kind of things.
Magic.
I think we
Magic
have
fairy
short
dust.
memories, and it's not just security, right? It's just human beings in general, and the security industry is pretty focused on hyper growth. No matter who you look at, it's all about hyper growth, and it's about getting there the quickest to have the most, if you're not a public company yet, to grow public or to be acquired. And if you are a public company, it's about, being that Palo, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, Fortinet, which we're, going to talk about in a second. It's all about that. And so the pain of 2020, 2021, even the beginning of 2022 is in the rearview mirror. People, just look at all the money that's being thrown into other areas, not just data, although we have a number of data security companies here today. AI, like people are throwing money at any company that claims to do AI without testing the veracity of the claims.
As we'll see
Yep.
in one of today's stories,
Yeah.
with
FOMO.
7 AI. So spot on, Katie.
Yep. Yeah, some serious FOMO going on. People are so scared to miss out on the next big thing. Yeah, they'll just forego the due diligence.
Yeah, and one last thing to call out here is that the Series C was joined by Khosla Ventures, which was founded by the infamous VC Vinod Khosla, and he has backed GitLab, Okta, Vectra, just to name a few. They don't solely play in the security space. They play on like frontier tech, defense tech, and many different other categories. So when they invest in a security company, it's a good stamp of approval from a legendary VC. So there must be something novel that they're doing there, and I think it has to do with that data lineage piece, which is a very hard
Yeah.
problem to solve. Which ties back to Tyler's question: why do they need 88 mil to solve this problem? Maybe it's a super hard problem that requires a bunch of PhDs and
Yeah.
a lot of money flowing into R&D. So,
Yeah.
until we see a product and it actually solving it in real time, then you
So
know,
so sometimes we see companies throw a bunch of money at PhDs and filing patents, and use that as like a measuring stick for success and growth instead of a working product. I'm not talking about. I mean, just hypothetically, like sometimes we see that happen. It's totally not another story we're going to talk about today.
Wow, lots of foreshadowing today. That's great.
A lot of it. So Threat Modeler, I thought was interesting. 60 million from Invictus Growth Partners, and I was like, that's a really distinctive name. I've seen that before. And it was, we saw Binary Defense, which is Dave Kennedy's other company, aside from Trusted Sec, who raised around from them like a $30-35 million round in 2022. And I was just trying to wrap my head around what they do, because they say they do threat modeling, and I actually have a list in Notion in my notes of all the threat modeling tools out there, and this was not one of them. And I don't know, maybe they have a different definition for threat modeling, but they say they can automatically discover all the attack surface, and it's just, to me, that's always been kind of a manual process. Like, it seems like it would be really tough uh, to automatically find all the attack surface, because not all of it is something that you can necessarily scan. But one of the examples they have here, they're showing temperature sensors, Bluetooth, infrared sensors, Wi-Fi. So maybe they do. I don't know.
Adrian, you're right. Threat modeling is usually um, takes on a very manual approach, as we've seen with like different methodologies and frameworks like Stride and Pasta. It usually involves getting like an architecture diagram and understanding what the data flows are for that given application or environment, and then identifying, okay, these are the potential like risk and threats that we
Right.
may be open or privy to here and there, et cetera. And we've had Adam Shostak on just recently, who
Yep.
grandfather the stride methodology. So to me, I haven't like I think it's a huge step in the right direction to see threat modeling being productized. And if they can do it for IoT, as they're kind of hinting at, and then they also have a cloud based, like a cloud focused solution, anything that they can do to kind of streamline threat modeling and be champions of threat modeling. Because honestly, I don't think that there are enough enterprises or like security teams that do threat modeling or like prioritize it. Then I think like threat modeler has a very good market to tap into. I can't say much about like the efficacy of their actual solution, but the
Mhm.
fact that they've raised this much is a good indicator that they're headed in the right direction, and they're backed by Invictus, which backed Dave Kennedy's companies, which is not a
Yeah.
bad thing either. So
I'm
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious about this. I guess if you pointed at a code base and you saw some Arduino code in there and it's talking to different sensors and stuff like that, you see it pulling a configuration down from AWS or something like that. You can determine that it's like a cloud managed IoT device or something like that. So yeah, I guess if this thing is scanning code repos to build out these diagrams of attack surface, yeah, I mean that, it doesn't have to get to 100%. Like if it saves me like 90% of that work, yeah, it's pretty cool. I think that's an interesting approach. I'd like to learn more about it.
Yeah, and
Um,
they do have an IAC, infrastructure as code assist feature, which
yep.
spiders your Terraform templates, and also they can hook up into your cloud environments to look at all of your cloud assets and see how they're all interconnected to try and develop that threat model map.
Yeah, I
So
mean from the screenshots, it's auto generating diagrams. It looks amazing.
exactly, and anything that we can automate in the security world gives our practitioners an upper hand and helps save us more time and become more efficient. And I think that's a huge win for the industry. So again, I love to see threat modeling being productized. How good is it? We'll see. But kudos to the threat modeler team for sure.
Next one's very interesting. 7AI.
Hmm.
Greylock led this round, $36 million in financing. This is the founding team from Cybereason, um, doing autonomous threat hunting using AI. So, man, saying some very exciting stuff. The fact that it's the Cybereason founding team gives me a little hesitation, given I don't know what's going on with Cybereason, but last we talked about them, it was not great things. Um, it was one of those that lost a ton of value in the last financial downturn.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did a little research, found that the name refers to the 7 patterns of AI as outlined by by Cognilytica.
Cognilytica.
Yeah, and I've got them listed there in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as it's easy. I'm putting that in air quotes for those that are listening and not looking, but it's easy to get funded as an AI security startup right now, right? You're a cyber security company, you're an AI company, you're the previous founders of a unicorn. Like they got a whole lot of stuff going for them there on a $36 million seed round. I often, and we'll get back to why do you need 36 million on a seed round? Maybe there's some technical reasons there that's necessary, but this feels to me like a just pile it behind the multi-time founder with a big idea and see where it takes us kind of play. But I don't know anything about their product. I don't know anything about what they've built. Maybe they have some kind of strength behind them that I'm unaware of. But it feels a little bit, team in a dream, fire and pray kind of investment here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some AI driven threat hunting stuff before, and several times actually. None of those times has it worked. So I start from a position of skepticism on these claims.
But my follow-up point is you probably saw those AI plays prior to Gen AI being launched, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So maybe we're in an era where the Gen AI difference is really going to allow some massive thing to innovate in a way that we hadn't seen previously. And this could be the one, right? So I don't want to say that it is doomed. It definitely has some orange flags, light yellow flags, whatever you want to call them for me. But it's going to be interesting to see how it lines up against all of the other billion AI
Yeah.
cyber security companies that are popping out now.
100%. And one thing that stood out to me is that they just began developing their solution in February. So what, 4 months ago?
Hmm.
And they were able to raise 37 mil. And I think that's because
That's
the founder
crazy.
is a
Yeah.
second time founder, obviously funded cyber reason, but also I see this as a direct competitor to something like Drop Zone AI. There, the one liner for 7AI seems to be that it hunts for cyber threats autonomously and can conduct investigations, and that's exactly what a solution like Drop Zone AI or an AI powered SOC augmentation tool does. And so
Yep.
this is one of many in their class, and we'll see what if they become the winners or one of the ones that lead the pack. Like what their secret sauce is. Right now, you could sign up for the wait list on their website, but there's nothing on their product or no other copy that tells us exactly what the product does, which is a little concerning, but all good.
Yeah, we talked about it sounds kind of similar to Copilot, Security Copilot. We
Hmm.
talked about that a bit last week, where really some of what they're doing here, instead of using ML to detect anomalous traffic, they're reading through the alerts and stuff like that coming out of more traditional IDS IPS tools, log data, stuff like that, and really just once there's an alert on something, I don't know if that's what 7AI is doing here, but going and gathering all the context for that without you having to build a SOAR playbook. So I wonder if it's something like that. But as you pointed out, Darwin, probably a bit too early to be analyzing them too closely when they're 4 months in.
Exactly.
We've also got passwordless security company Hyper raised $30 million. That's effectively a Series D. It's looking like, but we're calling it a venture round. They've got a little over 100 million. I think they're almost a decade old at this point. Um, Also, yes, we hack, European based one. I'm not French based. It looks like raised 26 million euros, which I looked that up. That's roughly 28 million US dollars to accelerate its growth, international expansion. Guillaume Ross, sometimes emergency co-host of this podcast, mentioned they're pretty well known and popular in French-speaking Canada.
And
So apparently
they're
been
also
around
known
for a while.
as they're also known as Oui je suis hack en français. I don't know. Just had to throw that
Is
out
that a
there.
joke? Is that how
Yes.
they say it?
That I don't know. That's yes, we do hack, but I have no idea.
All right, we get a good snippet there.
Adrian didn't even laugh. God, I'm the worst.
Oh, yeah, so they seem pretty big, 500 customers across 40 countries. I think that's roughly where BugCrowd was, maybe 7 to 10 years ago, something like that. So, making a lot of headway, and we've seen bug bounty companies be very region specific, language specific, because you are building a crowd of people, that you're joining to your platform, and also has the creator of Nessus, whose name I've never learned to pronounce, on the board of directors. Renault,
Renault de raison.
yeah,
There we go.
what Tyler said. All right, yeah. So let's move on to the acquisitions. Two of the three acquisitions we've got today are DSPMs. Correct, Darwin?
Correcto.
You want to talk about
OpenRaven
those a bit?
and so FormStack, which very interestingly enough seems to be a direct competitor to DocuSign,
Hmm.
has acquired OpenRaven, which is a DSPM. I've tried to dissect this to see like why would DocuSign competitor acquire a data security solution, and when you look at FormStack's product line, they help around security for forms, documents, and forms and documents ultimately. And if you look at the solutions that they provide, they play heavily in the healthcare and financial services industries. So when you think about like HIPAA and high trust and things of that nature, there are probably some capabilities and features that were extremely attractive to them from the OpenRaven platform. I'm not sure if they will continue to market or have OpenRaven operate as its own subsidiary, or if they'll just extract the features that are most relevant to them on the like form side and go ahead with that. But I did find that this was an extremely interesting acquisition, and yet another one in the DSPM space. So
Yeah, it's a super interesting acquisition, Darwin, for the reasons that you specifically talked about. It doesn't seem to be an acquisition. I mean, it might be, but it doesn't necessarily at first glance seem to be an acquisition where they're going to add a new product offering to their portfolio. They may just enhance what they've already got to provide security for their customers and maybe not even charge any additional uptake. I don't know for sure. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but when you go to OpenRaven's website, this is for those that don't know, this is originally was Mark Curfey's baby, the one of the OWASP founders, early guys. I don't know, he goes way back, but this was originally his baby before he left it quite a while ago, and it is focused on security of data and security of data primarily at rest or at edge movement, which makes a whole lot of sense for a document signaturing tracking style company to pick up to add, even if they don't even resell it. And my gut tells me this was a bit of a sale on the downward side, probably not for a whole lot of capital, and maybe it just made more sense to pick it up for a small number than it did to build it themselves.
bingo. Eh,
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's the same thing I was thinking when Darwin was talking, Tyler. Yeah.
and FormStack is no small fry. They have 32,000 customers, enterprise customers.
Wow.
So we'll see
Yeah, and
what they
Tenable
do.
and Eureka, Darwin. I think you know a little bit about that as well.
Right. So Tenable over the past couple of years, they acquired Hermetic. So they acquired like a nice healthy CNAP portfolio from Hermetic. So they now cover CIEM or KIM, as we covered on last episode. They have infrastructure as code scanning and all the other CNAP native features on top of their vulnerability management features and a bunch of the attack surface management stuff that they've been doing. And so now that they've added DSPM, they've essentially have expanded their Tenable cloud security portfolio. And I think it's so that they can continue competing with the likes of Palo Alto Networks, Wiz, CrowdStrike, and continue to be competitive in a landscape where customers are prioritizing the platform approach. And I'll pause there because I'm getting some like
Yeah, and they've
terrible
been Tenable's
network
been pretty
issues. Is
steady
there
ever since they
anyone?
went
Am I coming
public.
through clearly?
That Oh, yeah, you dropped out a little bit, so I was jumping in to fill in.
Copy. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just saying Tenable's been pretty steady at filling in with acquisitions ever since they went public. Almost like clockwork, picking up stuff to fill in those. I guess we're calling it exposure management now. Gaps in exposure management, since it's far beyond just vulnerability management.
Yeah, we're starting to break into the CTEM market, continuous threat and exposure management space a little bit there. So, um, yeah, I mean, look, we all knew data security wasn't going to be an isolated market for a long time. It had to roll up, right? It had to be pieces of everything else because everything else has data and needs to be secured. So
Yeah.
fundamentally, I'm not surprised. Um, I do find it very interesting who's doing the acquiring, right? As opposed to who's getting acquired. It used to be really, really exciting to me when company X got acquired. Now,
Yeah.
what's more telling more often than not is company X is doing an acquisition because it's really starting to give away strategic direction choices that some
Hmm.
of these companies are choosing to make on how they will remain competitive in a highly consolidating market from a public platform vantage point, right? And if we continue to consolidate down to a small handful or number of platforms, the breadth of that offering becomes important. So Tenable picking up a DSPM makes a whole lot of sense to remain competitive in a spot where consolidation's occurring.
And it's
Remember
just
when?
not unusual anymore to raise money to acquire, right? Like 10 years ago, it was a lot different. Companies didn't raise money just for the purpose of acquiring a company. And now we're starting to
Mhm.
see it, or at least maybe not solely, but primarily for the ability to acquire. Maybe it's to grow market share, maybe it's to acquire a specific technology or even take out a competitor. But it's not as unusual as it was a little while back.
Sure. Sure. Between that and publicly traded companies with massive dollar coffers waiting to be deployed, it makes total sense for these acquisitions to occur. And here's the kick: like, go find the publicly traded cyber company that is not making acquisitions, and I will show you the next IBM that withers and dies on the vine.
There's no way to get that big without acquisitions. There's just not. Would take way too
There's no
long.
way to remain innovative. You can't
Well,
remain innovative.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're saying this right in the funding press release, right? They're saying we plan to use this for acquiring companies, right? Like that's become a pretty common thing to see. But for our next acquisition, Katie, I wanted to go to you and have you tell us a little bit about the roller coaster that has been Lacework.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anybody in the industry who hasn't been hearing about Lacework and some of its issues in the past. I don't wanna dwell on them too much, but, in the past year or so, it's become pretty obvious that Lacework has had some trouble. They laid off a ton of people, some of their key personnel, like, shot out of the company at full speed. If you go to Glassdoor, their ratings, current and past employees are warning people against it. So Lacework has been in a little bit of a weird space. We'll just call it weird to be politically correct. And a little while ago, Wiz, the mega cloud company, made some noise about acquiring Lacework. That deal fell through pretty rapidly. There wasn't a lot of buzz about it. It was just gone. It was like off the menu.
Yeah,
It was 86
due
right out of
diligence.
there. And then next thing you know, we've got Fortinet announcing its acquisition of Lacework. Um, and they talk about wanting to get CNAP in their portfolio. And it feels to me like it is one of those acquisitions that is geared towards this, you know, Palo, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, we keep naming the same companies, platform play, become these mega security companies. But why Lacework? There is some rumoring that maybe they were sold for pennies on the dollar. So maybe it was an
They were fire sale
acqui-hire,
for
maybe
sure.
it
Yeah,
was
the clearance aisle is the why.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, you say it, I don't wanna say it. But, maybe it's, "Hey, we have a piece of this technology, and now we can say we include that in our portfolio. This is a super blue light special that we can now just say, 'Hey, we have this capability in our SASE.'" It feels to me like that's what it is. It'll be interesting to see how this falls out, because when you acquire a company, you also acquire its baggage in a lot of ways. And
Yep.
just acquiring something because it's cheap, just because it's not expensive, isn't always the best way to go. So we'll see.
Yeah.
What I want to know is the substantiation of the rumors that Fortinet paid 30% more than the offer that was on the table prior, which
Oh,
is
really?
interesting to me. I had heard that. I tinfoil hat on, full transparency, no idea if it's true. It's rumor mill kind of stuff, but 30% more than was being offered prior,
The
which to
whiz.
me says it could have been involved in the actual destruction of the original deal.
Well, so I mean, so I'll step out on a limb here and say probably they're worth more to Fortinet because Wiz is in the same category effectively. So
Right.
Wiz would have had to thrown away a lot of their stuff because they've got the same stuff. There's probably more overlap there than
Right,
Fortinet
for
had.
sure.
So maybe they were able to make the point that hey, you're going to use more of our stuff, so we're worth more to you.
But also,
Possible.
you're
Possible.
the money guy, Tyler. 30% of 30 cents is a lot less than
Oh yeah.
30% of 30 million, right? So
Listen, either way, they were in the bin with the CDs with Rick Astley and Tiffany. They were not in Billie
No.
Eilish's bin. Okay, so that's my quote of the day. They were in the discount rack. To quote Billy Joel, they were in the back of the discount rack. Right. So, um, yeah, 30% of zero is still zero.
Darwin, do you know who Tiffany is?
No.
Ah, thanks, Katie. Thank you, Katie. Well played.
All right. Now
She's
that we've
trying to age
established
you,
the age
Tyler.
of all the co-hosts, let's move on from acquisitions and let's talk about Apple a little bit. I watched the WWDC on Monday, and a bunch of my friends who never get excited about this kind of stuff were chatting to me about private cloud compute because they released some details of what they're doing here. They're doing like stuff that would get folks at Eclipsium excited, confirming stuff down to the like supply chain, cryptographically controlled supply chain down to confirming the OS image on the cloud servers that you're interacting with. And I mean, it's not surprising that it's coming from Apple, but Apple doesn't always share a whole lot of details of how they do what they do. Like usually it's up to iFixit or some researchers to kind of reverse engineer and figure out how some of the protocols work, and then the details of all the lengths they've gone to secure something come out. But I thought this was interesting to get some details of how they're using private cloud compute. And certainly, like we talked about Salesforce's ads, and talking about the market sensitivity to your data being redirected into some training model somewhere. The whole industry, whether individuals, artists, content creators, businesses, are very sensitive to what happens to their data when they use AI services. So yeah, any thoughts on private cloud compute?
I think to me, it's a huge step in the right direction. It's only a problem. It's only like a solution you can come up with if you have the money to put behind it. So Apple has clearly spent a lot of time and money on R&D for this solution. The privacy based folks, I think, are up in arms over the past year with like Slack. secretly training their AI models using your conversations, right? Salesforce. There have been a lot of trusted enterprises and product companies who have kind of swindled the public and their user base. And
Yeah.
it's great to see Apple being extremely transparent and choosing the side of privacy. And also, we think back to like 2012 or 2013 when the FBI was trying to get the iPhone for the San Bernardino attackers cryptographic keys so that they could access his text message logs and things of that nature. Apple went to bat for the privacy
Yeah.
community against FBI. So this is very much in line with the Apple fabric and DNA. What perplexes me is that in that same WWDC event, they also announced the feature where you'll be able to mirror and access your iPhone over your laptop or Mac, which is like a security or privacy nightmare.
Right.
So there were a lot of interesting things to take away from WWDC, but yeah.
Yeah, they controlling your phone, like it's insane. Like you play and you're using Instagram on your phone through your Mac, and you hear the audio output on your Mac. Like, it's a whole virtual representation of your phone. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You're
Similar
on
to
mute, John.
recall, maybe.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm actually mostly excited, and this might be what you guys are talking about. I'm not entirely sure because I didn't see WDC directly, but from what I've read about it, I'm mostly excited about Apple Intelligence AI, um, which is
yeah.
essentially their
So
yeah,
this is
it's
the
their
stuff behind it, is what we're talking
yeah,
about.
it's the so I don't what's interesting is I don't care what's behind it because at the end of the day, the general consumer is not going to care what's behind it. What the general consumer will care about is they can ask a very difficult question or ask for an action to occur and it goes and happens. And when you see that happening, which is the natural extension of AI on Siri or built into Siri or built into your phone is hey, go do this, of multi-step processes and actually having actions occur because it's smart enough on the back end to execute, that's when stuff's going to get super fun. And once that super fun stuff actually materializes on the front end, the back end becomes completely irrelevant to the average user and privacy doesn't matter a lick. So hopefully they do it the right way from the ground up so that it doesn't become a massive nightmare. But I'll tell you right now, if they don't do it the right way, it's not going to matter. It's still going to go.
So I think, this reminded me, I was doing a panel cast for CRA a couple days ago, and somebody mentioned they were working with, they were alluding to who the company was, but the way they alluded to it made it obvious that it was Disney. Uh, you know, Talking about what the company really cares about, like what really gets them worried. And it all came down to trust from the consumer, because they see themselves like they have like 100-year plans at Disney. It's a multi-generational sale there. They want currently the kids who are coming to bring their kids to the park and engage in all the stuff that Disney has, all the different products and things like that. And I think Apple's probably thinking of themselves in much the same way, which is why they defend privacy so hard. They're seeing that as one of the core tenets of trust from their customers, and one of the primary reasons that it's highly unlikely, that you see a large chunk of their customer base, just suddenly jump over to the Pixel, right? Or something like that. Like maybe a few people do here and there, but they were never really like full Apple customers anyway. They were never probably not fully into the ecosystem. With tablet, phone, earbuds, watch, like it's everything now. So yeah, I think that's why they can justify going to these lengths to make sure that privacy concerns are handled, and also the
I,
reason behind the transparency, the reason we have a
yeah.
blog post on this.
I to put a finite point on it, I like that they're doing it the hopefully correct way from the ground up. But at the end of the day, the reason why they have to do it now is because if they don't do it, there's no coming back. Because once you've made that trade-off for usability or feature, and the general consumer won't care about the privacy as long as it's not compromised. They won't care about how it's built until it affects them directly in a very harsh way and then you have to fight back the trust issues, right? So Yeah, I hope it's done right. I think Apple has largely done security right in a general sense since the invention of of the iPhone. So hopefully they'll continue that trend and make this work really well. I, for one, cannot wait for all of this concepts of technology to get over to my Android platforms because I'm an Android guy. But it's exciting to see it on the Apple side.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on to Microsoft Recall. I thought we'd come at this from a different direction. Darwin, you're a product guy. I think clearly, like it's still hard to use computers today. It's hard to find the stuff you were working on yesterday. It's hard to remember which Google account you were using for it. If it was in a Word doc or a Google doc. It seems like there's still an opportunity here just to make computers easier to use in terms of finding the work that you're working on, remembering what you were doing previously, which I'd love to hear your perspective, Darwin, on where, you know, Microsoft Recall was born, and maybe a product designer, product manager's brain. And, clearly the way they implemented it, most people weren't happy with. But is there a way that you can do this? Was there a better way to do this than what they did? What do you think?
You know, I feel like I'm back in undergrad where I studied pre-law, and I'm being asked to take the side of the case that I
Kinda.
absolutely disagree with, right?
Yeah,
As a
that's kind of what I'm
security
doing. Well, because
yeah.
everybody else is doing the opposite. I got to try something different. It's
So
been discussed to death.
Adrian, you could have gone to me because I firmly believe that I would have bought it in a heartbeat.
Okay.
And so in that case, I will defer to
Well,
Tyler
shut up,
to take the
Darwin. Yeah,
case.
yeah. Tyler, what's your opinion?
No, I want to hear your response. I mean, at the end of the day, I've been complaining publicly on this show that I want something that unifies everything I do in my life into a single location. I've been
Mm.
saying it for a year and a half. This was the start of it. This was the opportunity to connect and collect everything I click on, everything I view, everything I see, everything I do in my digital life, centralize it and give me a second brain. This was the way I envisioned what they built. But everybody flipped out and said, you can't have a second brain because what if the second brain gets stolen, right? And personally, I'm willing to trade that risk. Please secure it properly, Microsoft. Please do it the right way. Sure, there's better ways to do it than how they executed, right? And I know all the privacy wonks and cyberheads are going to come at me in the comments, and feel free to do that. I put myself out there on purpose here. But at the end of the day, assuming it could be done securely, this is exactly what I was looking for. And to a degree, I would have taken a shot right away with it had it been on Mac because I'm a Mac guy. But had it been a Mac version of that, I would have clicked go almost immediately.
I think there's just a component of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that we've been talking about not using insecurity that's actually hitting the consumer market, but they're not familiar with that idea quite so much, but they know that intrinsically this feels a little creepy, right? The you're different. A lot of people in security or just technology in general have a different feeling toward this. Like we were watching TV the other night and the Google glasses came out and my husband's actually looking for a new pair of sunglasses. I said, "Should I get you those?" And he was like, "F no." He's like, "Why the hell would I want that?" And I'm
But
like you wouldn't want to be able to look something up and and he was like, No, that's awful. That's creepy." And I think this for a lot of consumers went into creepy land and they didn't
but hold on,
understand why.
rewind to the birth of Facebook and Meta, Katie. And I know Darwin wasn't alive at that point, but the rest of us were. So rewind to that era and think back of what you thought or said as a privacy person, looking at that, going, "Oh my God, I'm not going to put all my personal information on Facebook. It's insecure. What if the permissions aren't right? What if people can see things they
And they
shouldn't
weren't.
see?"
They
And they
and they
weren't,
and they
and the
weren't.
world didn't die.
But the difference between Facebook and something like Recall is that there and this goes beyond me. I'm not that old yet, thank goodness. Um, there wasn't actual Facebook on college campuses. This was Facebook wasn't yeah, there was. I know you're not quite as old as I am, and I again, this was coming from like my parents' era. there was an actual Facebook that people used to pass around on college.
Right. I know the
campuses.
source of Facebook.
But so the human element was there as the background, and Zuckerberg, love him, hate him, or don't give a crap about him, he knew that there was a human connection. And so even though everybody was like, well, we're putting our entire lives online, the string, the tiny little thread was already there. For something like recall, it's, oh my God, you're putting my entire life in a box. Very few of us
So
actually
hold
want
on
to put
for
our
a second
entire
here.
lives under a microscope in a
Well,
box. But
for a second here, like let's look at story number 5 and then story number 6. What do you see as the big difference here? Two giant trillion-dollar tech companies introducing a new product that could be seen as creepy, or have privacy issues. Uh, Nobody's screaming about number 5. Everybody's screaming about number 6. What's the difference you see here?
the word
Spin.
privacy.
Spin. Marketing.
And Microsoft and the CSRB report that just came out.
Yeah.
Microsoft's track record of security is terrible. Over the past 10 years, they've had many security lapses. Apple, not that many. And so I think that's one key difference. And the last thing I'll say on like the recall thing, it feels like an episode of Black Mirror where we've seen this movie before, and we kind of we have this as a society, we have this inkling feeling that we know where this may be headed. And so the fact that the reason why privacy and security experts are up in arms is because Microsoft has lost our trust. And it like
Yeah.
we've seen this on Black Mirror, and we've seen it on many different shows. And it's like these overlords don't necessarily care about
Yeah.
what's best for the humans. It's for the shareholders, right? And so they're they're trying to extrapolate as much value from their customer base, and who knows where that will go.
So
But it is concerning
what
to me, at
all the
least.
more reason to take the Apple approach, right?
Exactly.
Like Apple's over here, like we need to get this right before the plane leaves the ground with
Mhm.
passengers on it. And Microsoft is like, we'll fix it in flight, and guess what? Well, this is
For
the
sure.
result.
And I
For
do
sure,
think
but I'll-
Tyler's right. A lot of it is spin, and it goes back to the talk I gave, 3,000 years ago at Besides Knoxville. Really creative marketing campaigns aren't just for B2C companies. And Apple has done a lot to cultivate its brand as a user-friendly, we care about you company. Microsoft hasn't done that. Because Darwin, your point about CSRB, absolutely, for security people, for tech people, for privacy people, your consumer does not know what that means.
What you call spin, I call company culture.
So let me ask you a quick question though, and I'm going to ask this question of you three, and I also wanted to go out to the world because I know I'm going to get ripped up for my thoughts on this being kind of an anti-security view. But what if Recall was launched the way it was, but it was launched by Apple? Meaning Apple
that's my
launched
point.
it.
They
Do you
wouldn't
think
have.
they would have had the backlash? Do you think the world would have been up in arms, or would they have simply said, "Oh, this is super cool. It's going to collect everything about everything and give me my second brain and be able to look up whatever I need whenever I need it"? People would
Yes.
have loved it, ate it
No,
up.
no, there would have been backlash, and it would have been from the same people. It would have been primarily coming from the security people because the
I'm not
security
sure
people
about
don't
that.
care. They don't care what the brand is on it.
I'm not sure about that because of what Darwin brought up with the built-up trust. The Apple tends to do things right. I think there would have been an assumption that they put some things in play. Maybe they would have massaged it a little bit and say we did X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3 to secure it, whatever. But I don't think you would have had half the backlash if
I
Apple
don't either.
announced it.
Well, let's look at some of the initial decisions on recall. The first thing is that was going to be enabled by default,
Mistake.
and
Yep.
huge mistake, right?
Yeah.
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 Because if it's an insecure feature,
Opt
but
out,
it
not
brings
opt in.
yeah, but it brings a lot of like value to my personal life and my day-to-day life, then I should be able to opt into it, of course.
Facts.
But
Yep.
and then the other thing there, which is one of the things that they updated in their security update, most recent security update, is that the screenshots will be encrypted as they're being sent up to the cloud. Previously, I guess this insinuates that it was not
They're
encrypted.
being sent up to the cloud? I thought they were just being stored locally.
Stored local. I don't quote me on this. From the press, it seems like if you have like O365, it can be sent up to the cloud. But obviously, there's a locally stored version. There has to be a locally stored option, or that's
Right.
the primary way to do it. But it was unencrypted, and that's one
Right.
of the updates that they've made in the announcement they made last week. So it's
Yeah,
concerning how
now
they,
they get a long road back now.
yeah, as you
Yeah.
Yeah,
said,
they
fix it in flight, right? Versus making these. It seems like Microsoft didn't even run this by their security team.
yeah,
It's
fix it in flight turned into grounded before takeoff.
right.
Yep.
And now
That's a great
they're gonna have to
quote.
work back from that. Yeah.
That's a great quote. Yep.
All right,
Sad.
let's move on here to the Snowflake attack. I think this one is super interesting. So this is and honestly, I think Rich Mogul says it great over on the Securosis blog, where and I had written most of these notes up until you get to edit before I heard about his blog, which was actually written a week ago or so. But yeah, to me too, like this is a great opportunity for a conversation about shared responsibility. Like if you see your customers getting hacked on your platform, like how long do you let that go on before you change the default S3 bucket settings, before you require MFA? So that's kind of the big question here. Like I wouldn't, if I was Snowflake, I wouldn't want my name tied to some of the biggest breaches of all time, even though yeah, sure, it's technically not Snowflake's fault, but yeah, it's a really interesting case, and those are conversations that we need to have.
I don't know that you're going to get any of the three of us to fight a counterpoint on this one, Adrian.
Right.
Like,
All right, then let's move on.
no, Snowflake screwed up. They left stuff wide open, and people didn't tighten it down and didn't configure it, and they put themselves into at risk. Right? It's like, hey, a 20-year ago throwback. Rack and stack hardware routers with default password and password. Right?
Yeah.
It's a very similar issue in the sense that you're sending out. Uh, Wide open systems and
Yeah.
expecting the person to actually be proactive enough to harden them, it's a poor mistake. Um, so I think it is a shared responsibility as far as who's responsible for this issue. I think both parties are responsible for the issue, but it could have been fixed fundamentally just by saying, let's just do this shit right out of the gate.
Right. And I do think there's a responsibility there because if we go back to the Okta support site incident, I used a Wayback Machine, went and looked at their documentation, and their documentation did say make sure you remove credentials from the HAR files before you upload them to our support site. And then I tried to figure out how to do that, and it's almost impossible unless you understand the variables in the web app, because a lot of them just have auto generated names. Like I couldn't figure out where the OAuth key was. There
Yeah.
was no variable called OAuth key in the cases that I looked at directly. So what they were asking was, I think, too much to put on the customer. They needed to find an easier way to make that safe for them to upload those files.
Yeah.
What I would say is that, as we saw last week, where Microsoft is enforcing multi-factor authentication for all Azure tenants, Snowflake should be following the same approach. Because if MFA was enforced by default and you couldn't turn it off, then
Yep.
none of this would happen. And if you think about the names that are involved in this breach, it's Santander, Ticketmaster, Lending Tree.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of consumers are affected by the lack of MFA. And I don't think that Lending Tree or Advanced Auto Parts has reported to the SEC the scope of the breach. The investigation is still ongoing. There's still a lot of details, to be gathered from this. it may have just been a breach on demo accounts that folks set up with like a free trial of Snowflake, and no proprietary or customer data may have been involved in the breach. But even just the names involved, the customer names involved in the breach, it takes a massive reputation hit on
Yeah.
Snowflake. And so I think this is a huge incentive for all SaaS providers to just like take a step back and see, should we enable MFA? Should we enforce MFA by default and like screw the user experience? Because like the main reason why a lot of SaaS providers don't enforce MFA out the gate is because of the usability and the like the friction that it causes to the user experience. But screw that. We want to ensure that like we're not open to these, info stealer malware risk. And if you could buy like credentials on the dark web, we could get password sprayed, and like then our name it. There's so much like uncontrollable variables when you don't have MFA
Right.
enforced. So it's
So
I
if
think
we
it's a
could pause
moment
just a
to,
second, we gotta
yeah.
let Katie go. Katie's got to run.
I have to run,
Yes,
unfortunately.
please.
We got started a bit late. See y'all next week.
See ya.
All right.
Love
See you
you,
then,
Katie.
Katie. Thanks for coming. But
All right, now we
yeah,
can talk
you're
about
right,
the real
Darwin.
stuff.
Like MFA is so fundamental. Like it's I mean, but these broad services, I don't know how many sales would Snowflake have missed out on if they required MFA. I can't imagine too much. It's becoming pretty standard these days, at least for admin accounts, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's such an interesting question, because that gray area between who's responsible for this issue, right? Is it the responsibility of the customer to set it up properly and securely, or is it the responsibility of the provider to have it secure by default? And as security wonks, we always will say secure by default. Come on, it doesn't
Yes.
matter. Just do it right. But at the end of the day, there's business implications, there's usability implications, there's people are going to turn it off anyways implications, right? Because they just think it's annoying. And so yeah, okay, let's turn it on by default, but I do think it's definitely an error on both parties.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see how that continues to unfold. We'll come back to it if we need to. But yeah, I want to go ahead and I think we've been going for nearly an hour now, so I want to go ahead and wrap. There are some more interesting stories we didn't have time to cover here. There's a new framework from CSA on AI resilience that I was kind of disappointed in, because all the marketing promises this big benchmarking approach, but then doesn't really deliver anything. So you can read some of my comments on that in the show notes. There's a great essay from Ross Hollyluk on describing the cybersecurity market as a market for silver bullets, not a market for lemons, as it's been described from others in the past. An essay, AI is making the internet worse. It's the classic kind of, taking only 100% of one side, kind of argument, when the reality is there's good and bad with generative AI. So I'm probably going to put together a counterpoint for that. I think it's a pretty lazy take, but a discussion worth having, which is why I'm going to respond to it. And then a crazy alcohol fueled story about how the first Microsoft Office 2007 vulnerability was discovered. It was a Twitter thread. And we linked to the Thread Reader app, which still exists. I found. I haven't seen that in a while. On how that was discovered. It's an interesting insight into both alcohol abuse and and exploit hunting. So yeah, basically they thought they found a vulnerability in it. Turned out not to be a vulnerability, but they didn't want to retract the press release. EI didn't, so they're like, okay, y'all have 48 hours to find a real one now. So it's a pretty fun story. Um,
Oh
and
gosh, this is a must read. This is a must read.
it's a fun story.
Yeah.
Despite the amount of alcohol involved is a little concerning, but
Well,
what
if you're old enough to remember the early EI
I hope
crew,
Greg's okay.
don't be surprised, right? If you remember the old EI crew back in the day, this is how they always rolled. So
Oh no, this was as he was writing the thread, he was drinking this much. So
Understood, but the apple's not going to fall far from that tree over time, is my point.
sure, yeah, yeah. But yeah, there's some amazing stories out there, and I'm glad some of them are coming out. He was talking about writing a book. I'm in there for the pre-orders if he does put together a book of those
Absolutely. This looks
stories.
great.
I would love to read that stuff. Uh, And number 12, we got a report from Nudge Security on the debunking the stupid user myth. Goes in kind of a different direction than I thought, but there's some useful stuff in there. Stuff we already knew, but wasn't really quantified. Like, if you tell somebody no, they're going to go do it anyway, but it gives you some actual percentages. And if you outright just try and block them, they're going to go around that. So I think we all know that. We've all seen that and experienced that, but it's always interesting to see somebody put together some, more formal study of like what percentage it is, like how big a problem is this really? Um, and then the squirrel story is the Light Phone 3 was released. I bought the Light Phone 2. It was completely unusable. I could not write a text. The on-screen keyboard has no. I don't know if people know this, but your iPhone keyboard has an AI model built in because your thumbs are not pressing the letters you think your thumbs are pressing. There is a very clever AI model, very fast AI model behind the scenes saying, you probably meant this letter, even though your thumb was like 2 or 3 letters away. This does not, the Light Phone 2 did not have that. And it had a tiny screen and it's an e ink screen to boot. So it's very slow to refresh. And I tried using the podcast player. And I'm just a gadget guy. I'm just trying out new stuff here. And I'm like, okay, how usable would this thing be? The podcast player would crash 20 minutes into a podcast. So you'd have to remember where you were so you could restart it and then scrub back to however many minutes and seconds you were into the podcast. The thing was just, and this is the second iteration. This third one looks a lot better. It adds a camera. It's a bigger screen. Maybe it would be usable now. I have heard of people moving full time to this, and people also using it as a secondary phone when they need to detox from social media and stuff like that. So once again, I'm tempted to buy one just to try it out. Also, you can swap out the battery with a couple screws, which is something I haven't seen in a phone in at least a decade. Um, I don't know if it's waterproof though, but and it's got a little
Adrian,
like BlackBerry jog wheel on it as well, which
Adrian,
is it.
no. Just no. Just say no to gadgets, Adrian. Just
It's got
just no.
5G, NFC, so you can do payments
Just
now.
no, buddy.
Maybe
Don't do
fingerprint
it.
ID. It looks sexy. The hardware is nice looking.
Adrian, it does not. No.
I think Adrian is highlighting a great point that humans need to a digital detox every now and then, and like we're so overstimulated by all the technology around us, like iPhones, Androids, work, email, all this stuff. And so I think what the light phone provides is like the essential functions on a small phone with like we try to ensure that the user experience is great, although light phone number 2 didn't satisfy Adrian's needs. I think it's a huge step in the right direction, and there's a customer base there. And the other thing is that like I, humans need to unplug every now and then, and with this covering this topic and then thinking about the second brain topic that where we spoke about Microsoft recall. I think those are two topics to ponder over the
Yeah.
weekend,
So
and see where you want to go, Tyler.
Darwin, I'll tell you this. I will buy you the base light phone if you can use it without going back to an iPhone or an Android phone for 6 months.
6
I will
months.
buy it for you and pay for it, but you have to come on a show and report. But it's got to be 6 straight months without that, the stimulus that you so call hate. The reality is we all love it because it
What's your
works.
screen time like, both of you guys?
Oh God,
Do
how
you
do you
track
find
your
it in
screen
Android?
time on your phone?
I'm sure I
I
do
do.
built into Android.
I'm at about 5-6 hours a day.
I'm at least
which,
that.
yeah.
I'm looking mine up.
At
See,
least,
Darwin's not jumping at the option for me to buy him a Light Phone 3. Do you notice that?
yeah, I
I
don't want to
do.
get rid of my blue text bubbles, man.
2.5 hours is my daily average.
I have green text, man. I'm a green text guy.
You're a boomer.
Oh my
I'm bu-
God, I've been just slammed for age this whole episode. Bro.
I love you,
All
Tyler.
right, Adrian, wrap us up, man. Get us out of here before I get ripped for being bald or something next.
All right. Yeah. So thanks so much. We already let Katie go, but thanks so much to the old man Tyler for joining me today, and the much younger man Darwin for joining me today.
Darwin
big
is half
thanks-
the man I am today. So
At
in
least I'm
age.
not a dinosaur.
Wow.
Oh.
And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly, regardless of what your age is. Thank you for listening. And we're off next week for the holidays, Juneteenth, I believe. And so we're going to be revisiting episode ES 255 with David Brumley, which was a very interesting episode that I remember. And we'll also have some more executive interviews from Identiverse for you. And we'll be back June 27th with 2 interviews in a new segment, including an interview with Marty Resch. Don't miss it. And I'll hopefully have more than bare walls behind me. I'm building out the studio. Hopefully there'll be more for you to look at. See you then.